Congressman Issa, stay there. Our next two guests are real players responsible for helping to get Donald Trump elected. They're the authors of the new book, Trump's Enemies. Trump's former campaign manager, former director, deputy campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie are both here. Hi, guys.
Hi, Judge.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Great to see you. Hello. How are you?
Long time no see.
All right. So, listen, guys, you got a great new book out, and I'm not going to talk about it right now.
Thanks, Judge.
What I want to talk about...
Where is it on the bestsellers list?
It's on the New York Times bestseller list, so we're very happy.
Congratulations.
It may be fake news, but it's our fake news.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? Now I feel like I'm part of your club. But listen, you know, what the congressman and I didn't have time to talk about, I want to talk to you guys about is the economy. We saw the GDP in 2018 hit record highs, but then it started to falter a little bit at the end of the year. You know, unemployment has stayed pretty good at 3.7%, but there was some volatility in the stock market that we saw, you know, in mid-December. What's going on, and what can the president do to make sure that he can continue to deliver on the message that apparently the House couldn't deliver on? Corey.
Well, I think part of it is, as you know, this president has focused American trade policy on renegotiating bad trade deals. When you look at what he's done between Canada and Mexico and the United States, getting rid of NAFTA and renegotiating that, that's a positive. But you also have to think about what he did with President Xi of China. Said, we're going to put a temporary stay on putting more tariffs on you.
Right.
And that was supposed to bring the market to these amazing numbers. And for a period, the market was up over a 3-day period, the highest it's been in 6 years. So the market responded, but it's very fickle. And now what we're seeing, Judge, over the last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks is every time the market goes down, whether it's 10 points or 50 points, they're now blaming the president. Unlike for all those times where it set record highs, under his administration,
it was
they
never the president who did it. It was
him.
Barack Obama.
It was Barack Obama who built this, right?
You know, maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Did Barack Obama build it?
No, Barack Obama destroyed our economy. This president's taken the last 2 years to build it up, whether it's bringing manufacturing jobs back, whether it is the energy sector, whether it is renegotiating these bad trade deals. I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the markets. And I'm not an economist, but I'm a political guy. And I look at the investigations that are about to beset this president and this White House. You are going to see a White House that is going to be under siege by the Democrat-controlled House here very shortly. And you're going to see a White House that is naturally going to constrict in its ability to get a legislative agenda through, as well as other priorities on the economy.
Let me ask you this, Congressman. I mean, you know, the House couldn't do what it might have done. We lost seats.
It didn't do.
Why?
Well, because the House is known for passing things and then letting the Senate fail to do it. This time there were a lot of things we didn't pass. We didn't even send them to the Senate that the president wanted.
The economy's so good. Why didn't Republicans win and keep the House?
You know, the economy is an interesting and fickle thing. In a good economy, a lot of Republicans don't get real excited and turn out. Democrats, looking at Donald Trump and despising him, did turn out. But, you know, one of the things about the economy, some people score the economy based on, 3.7% unemployment and so on. How about we score it like it was the real battle that it is between us and the Chinese? Last quarter, Chinese, 1.3% growth. Less than 2 months ago, I was at the World Economic Forum in China. Company after company told me about their leaving China. They're building their new factory in Vietnam or South Korea.
Oh, boy.
The fact
Not
is,
here. I was hoping you were saying the U.S.
Well, no, a lot are being built in the U.S., and we see those every day, but we don't see what's moving out of China just to move out of China. What China is dealing with is we're in this so-called war. And we're winning it. Yes, we're growing at X rate, but China has decelerated from its typical over 10% to 1.3%. They are in a free fall.
All right. What I'm going to do right now is I know we have a question from our audience, and I believe, sir, Ernie, I'll just call you Ernie. You're Ernie, right? All right, Ernie. Ernie's question is, what does the situation with China mean for the economy, and could things get worse?
Well, I think I just gave you a part of that. China is in a free fall. China still has more than 500 million people they're trying to get modern 21st century jobs for, and they don't have a way to get it. And the rest of the world is starting to eat their lunch, and they have an inflation problem. And quite frankly, they've gone back to being a communist dictatorship. So that's where China is. What does it mean for us? It means that we're going to have a more diverse group of vendors for the United States. Our partnership with Canada, our partnership with Mexico, renegotiated under this president, is going to grow.
All right. And I think you had an additional question.
Yes. And the additional question, and what will that do? What will that effect be on our elections coming up in 2020?
Well, look, as it relates to China, you have to think they're now agreeing to open their markets to our agriculture products because of the sit-down conversation that President Trump had with President Xi. They have blocked us from putting our exports there for a long time because they didn't want to compete against the United States. But that renegotiation is everything is witnessed at the ballot box. When people are doing well, they have to ask themselves a very simple question, which was asked under the Clinton administration and the Obama administration for a re-election effort. Am I better off today than I was 2 or 4 years ago? When you look at economic security, you look at homeland security, and you look at national security, every economic indicator of those issues says, yes, we are stronger today under the Trump administration than we were 2 years ago, right, which bodes very well for a re-election campaign.
And Judge, if I could, just one more thing is, in that conversation with President Xi, President Trump asked the Chinese president to take a stand on the opioid issue.
Yes.
And that is that potentially 2 years from now, not today, but 2 years from now, is going to be able to help us rein this tragedy in that is going on in this country. And I think that the American people hopefully will see the fruits of that labor as well.
All right. And now I believe we have another question from the audience.
Yes. Recently, I've seen a lot of headlines that the economy is just dropping, the stock market's crashing. It's been very worrying to me, and I'm wondering, could we be headed for another recession?
Look, I'm not an economist, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm just going to give you my ideas. But the truth is, I don't think so, because every economic indicator is showing that we're still expanding. Our economy is growing. It's not receding. We have to be very cautious of the Federal Reserve continuing to raise interest rates. It's something the president's been very candid about. He's been very vocal about it. We have to understand people are finally having more money in their pockets for the first time in literally a decade. Under the Bush and then the Obama economy, people didn't have job opportunities, and not just the new jobs, but what you're seeing in our economy right now is people who have jobs have opportunities to move to other places that didn't exist because the deregulation that this president has impacted in our environment, which means more economic opportunities for everybody.
Go ahead,
and I'd love to find a way to get the millennials to get into the housing market, right? That's one of the soft spots that we see in the economy coming up in the next several quarters, is that we see with the interest rates going up, the millennials have to understand and want to participate in that American dream.
Right.
That
we're going to talk about that,
for 200 years. Has always been a bedrock of our economy.
Yeah.
GOP financier from California, Dan Palmer. Dan, nice to see you. You listen to Mick Mulvaney and the Republicans talk about this. They started at $25 billion. Now it's $5 billion. Now sources are saying it's somewhere around demanding $2.5 billion, maybe a little bit more. Matt Gaetz was on a couple of days ago saying all we need is a crooked number. You've negotiated a lot of real estate deals. It feels like Republicans are almost negotiating against themselves here.
I don't like the way the Democrats have framed the debate. It's this number, it's that number. This is a national security issue, and I think this hiatus while Nancy Pelosi is relaxing on the beach in Hawaii and the American public is spending time with their family has provided a window for the president to reflect on how this debate has been framed. If he frames this correctly as a national security matter, cost is frankly irrelevant. Nancy Pelosi wants to make this a moral argument. The moral imperative couldn't have been more clearly stated than happened with the death of this officer in California. This is a complete outrage from a national security standpoint, and cost is absolutely irrelevant.
You talk in terms of the president reflecting on how to discuss this. This was from Politico this morning, talking about the president. He stayed home from Florida, but hardly appeared on television or in public. If you're going to do the, quote, I'm working thing, shouldn't you just do it and sit at a table with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer place cards and empty chairs?
That sounds like a lot of optics. I think the substance is the key. The fact is that the United States has a national security
This debate is about optics, Dan. No, I mean that's if arguably President Trump is the best guy, best politician in a very long time when it comes to optics.
He has certainly television skills and is good at the optics, but this is really about the substance. For Democrats who have front doors, i.e. a passive physical barrier to entry to their house, to argue that a passive physical barrier on the border would be ineffective is ludicrous. For them to argue that the cost is too high demonstrates that they're just terrible with math. This wall at $20 billion equates to $60 per U.S. citizen. The cost of an illegal immigrant over their lifetime in the United States is $130,000. Given 30 years of unrestricted border crossings, that's over $5 trillion.
You're making a very clear and convincing argument that's different than one we're hearing from almost every member of Congress, certainly than the one we're hearing from the president. Why aren't we hearing this cost doesn't matter, just build it argument?
Well, I think that's a tactical mistake. The Democrats have set a trap and the Republicans have fallen into it. This is a typical dynamic with these shutdowns. This is a national security issue. Cost is irrelevant, and the cost happens to be a good investment. A $20 billion wall equates to $6 per hour per U.S. worker in increased wages. Don't we think that restricting the flow of unskilled laborers into the market each year is going to improve American wages by more than 6 cents? I do. That's just 1 year. Every year thereafter is profit. So for a government that spends $13,500 per year per person to incur a liability over the last 30 years of $15,000 per person with unregulated migration is ludicrous.
The president just tweeted this a couple of minutes ago. Any deaths of children or others at the border are strictly the fault of Democrats and their pathetic immigration policies that allow people to make the long trek thinking they can enter our country illegally. They can't. If we had a wall, they wouldn't even try. The 2 children in question, talking about the 2 children who died there, were very sick. Before they were given to Border Patrol, the father of a young girl said it was not their fault. He hadn't given her water in days. Border Patrol needs the wall and it will end. They're working so hard and get so little credit. Again, though, we're not hearing this drumbeat from the president, frankly, of saying we're going to shut down the government for as long as we need to because it's a national security threat, and therefore I want my $25 billion. I want a blank check. The government can stay closed for as long as it needs to. Is that the argument you suggest he makes?
I think that he is, with that tweet, attempting to underscore the hypocrisy of the Democratic position. They're attempting to take the moral high ground, and they suggest that these tragic incidents of these young children dying on the border is somehow a demonstration that the president is morally bankrupt on the issue. Nothing could be further from the truth. Turning off the magnet of the ability to enter this country on foot without obstacle is the reason why these people begin this journey. They need to turn off the magnet. I think that the moral argument here has to do with protecting American citizens. We see this evidence with these angel tragedies. We saw it with Kate Steinle. We saw it with the officer in California. These are but 2 of numerous instances where United States lives are put at risk because we don't have a passive physical barrier on the border. Any Democrat who has a front door is a hypocrite.
You heard Steve Pomerantz, formerly the FBI assistant director, sort of make a similar argument in terms of the way law enforcement is being put on the front lines on this and put in much greater danger because of a lack of laws about this. All right, Dan Palmer from Los Angeles. Dan, interesting arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Now, this sales of Harley-Davidson motorcycles have declined, and I spoke with the Bikers for Trump spokesperson Chris Cox yesterday about it. Listen to what he had to say. Roll tape.
And as a result of the Biker for Trump movement, which turned into a political phenomenon, and he tried to hold them and raise them high on that mantle of respect, and then they turned around and slapped them. And it's been unacceptable, and I know our hundreds of thousands of members are still sore about that. And they certainly got a little bit of apologizing to do to our president if they want to get this market in America moving forward.
Well, our next guest doesn't quite agree with Chris. Want to bring in Mike Shelby, owner of San Diego Harley-Davidson, one of the largest in the country. Mike, state your thoughts on this.
Well, Chris is all wrong. He's full of this whole politics. I appreciate what he's done. Bikers for Trump is a group I support. I've spoken at their events. There's a decline in motorcycle sales, but it's only in new motorcycle sales, Charles. We're actually selling more motorcycles. We're a victim of our own success. These bikes are we're making bikes, Harley-Davidson, so well. They're lasting so much longer. They're bigger, stronger. And if you could buy a 5 or 6 year old motorcycle for, say, $7,000-8,000, that's what people are doing. A lot of dealers who I know are actually selling more used Harleys than new Harleys. The new Harleys are phenomenal. But a 5-year-old Harley, which is still state-of-the-art and is a great bike, is a bargain, and people are coming in for the bargains. You're going to get what you pay for. The new ones are amazing. But, there's a decline in new bike sales, and that's why nothing to do with politics.
Mike, I've gone through Harley-Davidson's annual reports and other filings for over a decade to do some research in this, and even their own admission is that the pool of buyers, or would-be buyers, has been shrinking as the demographic has gotten older and older. I mean, there's got to be some truth to that from that point of view. But also, what would you say to those folks? Because on social media, I hear from Harley riders all the time saying they are offended. They agree with Chris. They feel like that Harley-Davidson used the White House and President Trump for photo ops and then turn around and decisions that were already made on the corporate level long before Trump even ran for president, like, building these bikes outside of this country while shutting down American jobs, they blamed it on President Trump.
It's just not true. In the first place, every Harley-Davidson sold in America is made in America. Every Harley-Davidson that's sold worldwide is made in America.
So that 500,000 feet plant in Aniline, Australia, what do they have that for? What are they building out of that? They're building a plant in Thailand. They're going to build the plant in Europe. No, they do have manufacturing outside of this country, so you can't be telling the truth.
No, Charles, they don't manufacture, they assemble. There are places...
Oh, semantics. Okay. That's what you're doing, the semantics game. Are these jobs that Americans could have, though?
Wait a minute. That's not a semantic. Every engine, every transmission, every part of that motorcycle, including the engineering and the creativity of it, is made right here in the United States of America. There are places...
Mike, would you agree that there's a serious issue with the sales, at least to, that the Harley-Davidson stock is down dramatically. I understand growth is growing outside this country, and it makes sense to do manufacturing near growth areas. But I think the problem here is that they're blaming the president on issues that are company-specific, and I think that's where the rub is. That's where people are upset about.
They are not blaming the president. They are just doing what we have to do to overcome the obstacles to exporting, like high tariffs, and we hope this president is successful. I think he will be. He'll get the tariffs down. He'll hopefully get the other obstacles.
Those high tariffs already exist in those countries you're exporting to. He put up tariffs in our country to fight back against that.
Yeah, but they're going to raise their tariffs. It's just a that's
And then
fine.
Harley goes hat in hand and says, Europe, since you're going to raise your tariffs, we're going to take away American jobs. Is that how they fight back?
No, we're not. That's not true. We are not taking away American jobs. People like Chris Cox spreading these crazy rumors, that's what's taking away the jobs. But it's not true, Charles.
Mike,
yes,
we got to go, buddy. I love Harleys myself. I had a 1200cc Candy Apple Red one for 3 weeks. We'll see you soon.